Welcome to the Startups and AI podcast. Today, I'm joined by Christine Hopkins, who's the founder of ASCI. Welcome, Christine. I'd love to learn about what you've been building at ASCI and when you started working at ASCI.
Yeah, so there's two components of ASCII. One I'm the founder of, and one I was a successor of. So the original company, Advanced Supply Chain International, was formed in 1999. And I came to the company in 2013 as a succession plan. All of our business at that point in time was in oil and gas. And in 2019, mid to late 2019, the original founder passed away and I took over suddenly. And we all know what happened in March of 2020, right? The oil and gas industry, particularly in Alaska, was hit pretty hard. Part of it was COVID related and part of it was politics. It was political. Most small businesses supporting the industry went under in that process. We saw it coming, the political piece. And so we had started to lay some groundwork. And so I wouldn't say we were ready, but we had at least thought about it. So when it happened, I could see the company collapsing in the future, near future. And at the time we had 11 owners. I was one of them. And I negotiated a buyout of all of the other owners so that I could reclassify us as a woman-owned small business. One of our owners was a publicly traded company, so that was complex. And then stood up a sister company called ASCI Federal Services. I founded that one. And we took our commercial experience, pivoted into federal contracting, landed our first federal contract when the commercial company, within a month of it hitting rock bottom. So the commercial company essentially completely collapsed. We had one billable employee left. And then the pivot into federal contracting allowed us to stabilize and reinvent the company, refound it. So we're still in the commercial space, but we're also in the federal space. And what we do is supply chain management. We handle other people's stuff. So we go in and we buy their stuff, we store their stuff, we inventory it, we get rid of it when they're done with it as one business model. And then another business model is we take that experience and provide consulting services to small businesses.
Awesome. Yeah, this is an amazing story. I'd love to learn more about like your background because you bought out a company. You used to be you were like a succession plan there. You used to work there. How did you get the idea that you're going to take over? Like, have you had any experience prior to that in entrepreneurship? Like, walk me through how you were able to make such a big call.
Yeah. So I would say it's more just kind of how my mind works and natural. I've not owned a business before. This is the first experience and foray into that. But those kinds of decisions I've made my whole life. The first kind of real entrepreneurial decision was probably Alaska was the last state I lived in before we left the country. My dad's retired Air Force. And to make a long story short, when we left England, which is where I graduated high school, the military would send me anywhere I wanted. My parents went to Alabama and I went to Alaska because it was as far away as I could get. So first real kind of scary entrepreneurial decision as I moved to Alaska on my own with a couple of suitcases, a couple months rent, a semester's tuition, a few $100s. So that's where I started. Originally, I wanted to go into forensic psychology, decided I kind of wanted a family and friends, so changed my mind and actually went into social work for a short period of time and then into HR. And on my HR career, I chose working for companies that, not that they were broken, but they really had a challenge. And so I would go in and help them solve the challenge. And then when things calmed down, I would look for the next challenge.
So you've
So I
always
was in
liked the
HR.
challenge.
Yeah. Always liked a challenge and a real passion for the value of an employee, right? Making sure that they're valued and that the customer's getting the value out of that.
And then how did you get into supply chain?
So the founder, when he was starting to think about retirement, recruited for the position, but he recruited for it as a general manager and then cross-posted it as an HR director. And I wasn't at all interested. His headhunter was a friend of mine, and she called me multiple times and said, "You should apply." And I was like, "No, I'm not interested." He didn't know what he want. I'm not interested. And finally, she convinced me to have coffee with him. So I went and had coffee with him and we were talking through it and we got to the end and he said, "Do you have any questions for me?" And I said, "I do. You have this cross posted as an HR director and as a general manager. And that tells me you don't know what you want. What are you looking for? And he said, no, I actually know exactly what I want. I want somebody that can run my business in a way that values what we bring to the table. We're a service company. What we bring is people. How we do it is what makes us different. It's not what we do. There's a lot of people that do what we do. It's how. I can teach operations. I can't teach people. I'm not good at that. So I need somebody that can manage my culture. And that's why I came to the company.
So you got like you saw an opportunity and then you took your best shot. And then, like, did you ever
Yeah.
think you're going to be an entrepreneur at that point? Or did you ever want it to be? And you were just looking for the right opportunity, or it just happened?
I wouldn't go so far as to say I ever wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to be in a position where I could affect change. I hadn't defined what that meant. I just knew that I eventually wanted to get to a position where I could affect change positively for both the employee and the customer, not as much about making a buck, right? And I did know when I started that I would eventually take over if this was mutually beneficial because I was being hired as a successor. I knew that came with, at some point, having an ownership stake and at some point stepping into the CEO role. I had no idea that I would be majority owner and fully responsible. That wasn't what I expected. Yeah, that's just
What?
where the journey led.
Yeah, it's super interesting. What do you think are some of the best skills that, entrepreneurs in your experience have? What do you think is needed to do something like this, to be a business owner in your experience?
Yeah. Owning a business is not for the weak, right? So if the idea is I want to own a business so I can control my own schedule and make my own decisions, that is a benefit, but shouldn't be the reason you do it because it is hard. It is emotionally taxing. It is mentally and physically taxing, especially if you have employees, because now you're responsible for other people's lives and other people's families. It's a whole different level of pressure when you're trying to figure out how to make payroll. So I would say you've got to be resilient and really have a passion for what it is that you want to do. You have to have a reason to make it through the periods that are really hard because there will be some. There will be times when you question your life choices and you wonder if you can even do this. And you've got to be able to push through that.
Yeah, and I'm sure like you talked about, when you took over, it was during COVID time. There was like a lot of disruption, and you just talked about you need to be able to, push yourself through the hard times. So could you like share any, hard times that you had to face as a business owner, like, and how did you make the right decisions? What was your, rationale at that point, and how did you just, push through the hard times?
Yeah, we experienced a series of hard times that culminated in about a 92% revenue loss. So we
Wow.
went from about 200 billable employees to one, which was about a 20 million revenue. To that point in time, we were probably invoicing a couple 100,000. So there was hard decisions that had to be made in that process. I had to keep a team I couldn't afford to be able to scale back up, right? So knew we were going to hit the bottom. So the plan was to have a recovery in place so that it kind of timed appropriately, right? We knew we could do it. Could we do it before we ran out of money was the question. And honestly, what kept me pushing through that was I was doing this so that the team had jobs because it was right in the middle of COVID and it was hard to find work. And we were lucky enough that our office staff, our overhead staff could go remote. Our billable employees couldn't because we ran warehouses and forklifts and stuff. So they had to go to work, but our office staff did not. And so that was tough, right? Trying to keep the team together in the middle of that. They could see what was happening. They knew we didn't have the cash flow. So figuring out a way to be transparent enough that gave them what they need, but not terrified them.
Hmm.
Right. So finding that balance and being humble. I think having the humility to admit to your team when you don't know what you're doing garners a whole different level of trust and loyalty. And then having the curiosity to poke holes in ideas and find what's going to work. That's really how you make it through.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. So other than like you talked about curiosity, where do you think like you learned some of these other skills? Obviously, you had some experience, and then you always took It seems like from your experience, always were willing to take your chances. Were there like any books or any people you followed or like or any mentors? How do you think you got some of the other skills over the years to be in that position?
Yeah, I think part of it is just the way my brain processes things in looking for challenging assumptions and poking holes in things and okay, if that's not going to work, let's look over here. It's not that I think outside the box. I don't think there is a box. So that helps. Also, I think watching my dad while I was growing up and how he worked with his team and how he processed really gave me a model that I started with from a young age. He was in the Air Force, and I spent a lot of time kind of at his job watching where I would get out of school and then go hang out at his, he worked in a hospital. So I'd go hang out on the hospital. So that was one. And then over the years, watching the various different leaders in organizations and not just noticing what I liked, but noticing what I didn't and paying attention to the different tools and skills that they brought to the table and how they reacted to things and trying to integrate what I liked and eliminate what I didn't through honest self reflection.
Awesome. Well, talking about challenging things, I think AI might bring its own challenges, but it's like one of the biggest shift, at least in the way we work. Would love to learn about how AI is impacting your business and how do you see, the work changing with AI?
It's having a tremendous impact, both positive and the big unknown, right? Our customers are trying to figure out how to use AI in their supply chains. On the commercial side, it's do we use AI to optimize inventory levels? Do we look at any sort of automation tools? Do we look at robotics? On the federal side, it's much more complex. I mean, you've all seen it in the news, right? Today it's Anthropic. Tomorrow it's
Mhm,
OpenAI. Now they're both banned. Wait, nope, they're
mhm,
unbanned, right? So living in that as a federal contractor has been interesting. So that's the big black
mhm,
box over here. From our perspective, we're small. So there's not any fear in our team that AI is going to replace their jobs. There's a lot of excitement that now we can do more and an understanding that as we scale, we're going to need to leverage our AI tools to make our jobs more efficient so that we can scale without having to add people. So it's exciting internally
mhm,
and terrifying, right? Because it means
mhm,
change and some people don't like change. So working through that, not everybody's moving at the same pace. And that's probably the biggest internal risk.
mhm. Are there a like couple of use cases you could share which like you're using AI for automation or like, improving your speed?
Yeah, I can share two examples. So one is we're building an AI product. It's a Claude Cowork product for small businesses to do a procure to pay audit. So they would download the item, the SOP package, basically. We would give them instructions on how to load it into Claude Cowork, and then the product would prompt them and ask them questions and tell them what documents to load. And then it would do an analysis of their procurement process from the time they order it until they pay the invoices and what the gaps are. The intent is small business owners where it's I'm the owner and I'm managing the shop and buying the stuff, right? I don't have a dedicated person. They don't necessarily know what a supply chain is and all the components of it and where the bleeding is. So this is designed for them. They can't afford somebody to come in and spend $10,000 to tell them what to do. That's a month's payroll. Right. It's not for the big company that has a procurement specialist that knows.
Mhm,
So that's exciting. And the price point we're looking at is pretty reasonable. It's just under 1,000 to download it with a add-on to have help installing it and another add-on to have help interpreting the results. It's intended to assume that the small business owner is going to do everything themselves. And then if they need help, we are there to help them
mhm,
as far as closing gaps. And then the other for internal is we're leveraging a suite of AI tools, right tool for the right job, right? And so we've built an infrastructure where we're using Claude Cowork for analysis, and we've built pretty robust SOP type programs inside of Claude Cowork that run individual things. And then we have a master that sits over top of them and does cross project analysis. An example of how that would work is I might have one project that analyzes KPIs, and another project that analyzes market intelligence through, we feed it magazine articles or newsletters
Hmm.
or downloads from Perplexity. So we use Perplexity to do deep external research to include competitor analysis. And then that comes in, and there's one project that digests that. And then there's another project that reads from those and creates custom capability statements, right? Or
Hmm.
competitive analysis. So that's the Claude cowork layer. And then we use Perplexity, like I said, for the external research, because that's what it's good at. And then we use Chat GPT to help with the writing part, because that's what it's good at.
Hmm.
And then we use Zapier to move documents around because I don't want to give any of it access to our network.
Awesome. Yeah, that's super interesting. And I'm assuming like you won't be able to use like open source, like Chinese models and other like, even though they might be pretty cheap because of like the government. Do you think like the government is moving at a much slower pace, or are you seeing like adoption on the government side as well? That's one. And
Oh,
then, yeah, let's talk about that first.
the government always moves at a slower pace. It's big, it's bulky, it's complex. It's like saying an elephant and a cat, right? Cat's much more nimble, an elephant is not. It's moving faster than normal, which is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for the government and it's uncomfortable for the contractors because the rules aren't written for that. The rules are written for slow. So they're trying to rewrite the rules while they speed things up. And so it's kind of like trying to build a plane and fly it at the same time. It's not perfect. It's messy and there's a lot of chaos, but it is still moving in the right direction.
And in terms of, so this is like about today, what do you think, like if, every 6 months, the capabilities of AI are improving at like unprecedented pace? For example, like you can't even recognize if it's AI generated video anymore, but 6 months ago it was like very lame. So what do you think, like, do you have any predictions in, let's say, 3 to 5 years? And like one is a dystopian future prediction and the other one is utopian. Like, what do you think are the two, cases in your mind, or like any prediction that you might have based on how things are moving?
Yes, think, there's a whole exponential factor, right, of improvement. We've exponentially gotten better over the years. And the better we get, the bigger that exponential factor is. And so now it's moving at almost a self-sustaining, ridiculous rate. AI has been around since the 50s. We just didn't even hear about it until I'd say probably the early 2000s. And
Hmm.
people didn't know it was AI. It was just, hey, Siri, right?
Or your
That's AI.
Facebook feed or Instagram feed, like all the social media
Yeah.
that's like algorithm controlled by AI.
Yep. It's all AI. All AI. People didn't think that though. It wasn't a term until ChatGPT launched. And if you just look at when ChatGPT launched to where we are today, it's still night and day. I think a couple of things could happen, and it's really going to depend on, as a population, whether we get on board and try to corral it and learn it and control it, or we don't. So I think in one scenario, worst case scenario, right? Big tech runs the world, not the direction I think anybody except maybe big tech wants us to go. I think the other option is people learn it, they start using it, they start buying in, they educate themselves versus trusting. Right now, right? People read headlines because it's quicker. There's so much information. People could be leaning in AI to help tell if it's AI. It's like having AI teach you how to use AI. You can, but you have to lean into it. So I think that's one scenario where just everything improves, everybody improves, but there's some personal ownership that comes there.
Mhm. Well, what if people just start relying on AI completely and then there is bias, right? Like people tend to get lazier over the years, like with social
Oh, yeah.
media, now it's short form. And then, like you said, they just read the headline, but then they won't even read the headline. They'll just ask their AI. And if the AI is biased, for example, like if you get a model trained by US versus China, they might have like two different. So, like, what do you think? Do you think there's a solution to these problems?
I do. So I actually think 5 years from now, what makes a valuable employee isn't going to be that they know how to use it. It's going to be that they know how to make decisions based on it and they know how to apply judgment and discretion. I think that is going to become the most valuable skill in the marketplace is judgment and discretion
Hmm.
and applying it. It's little things like if I'm writing a LinkedIn post, I could go into Chat GPT and tell it to write one. And I think most people do this, right? You go in, you feed it the content, you say, write me a post, and they're like, oh, yeah, that looks good. They might tweak it a little bit and then they post it. Well, I've noticed, like, I go to a conference and then there's a bunch of LinkedIn posts about the same conference, and they all start with something along the lines of, one of the things I learned most, or I spent some time, right? They all sound the same.
Yeah.
They all open the same. They're not human. So we've gone from AI is cool because it sounds professional and refined to now we know it's AI because it sounds professional and refined. And so there's learning how to use AI without losing your voice.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes work. That takes work. If I want to write a LinkedIn post, I use AI, right? But AI doesn't write it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me longer, probably 3 times as long to massage it because I have to break AI's natural habit, which is to write like everybody else writes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else writes like that because that's how AI writes.
Yeah, yeah, I'm seeing this. Like you must have heard AI slop. So like
Mhm.
initially everything was about AI, but then there was like way too much. And now I think I saw somewhere that this like more AI generated content on the internet. So maybe that's gonna make like human generated things and maybe like a human to human interview versus like, talking to AI more important, more useful. But on the flip side, if like some of the big tech companies say there's going to be like a super intelligence, super god that could just do anything as good as humans and could maybe create something unique each time, then I don't know. That might be, then I don't know. What do you think then? What would humans do in that like scenario if you could have
We
like a
have to do the
super,
things, yeah, we have to do the things AI can't. I think that's the way the world is going to end up going. So I think the highest paid positions are going to flip. It's not going to be the coders and the AI or tech position, the office positions. I don't think those are going to become the highest paid positions. I think it's going to be the people who are making decisions and the people who have to deal with people. It's going to be your teachers, your nurses, your garbage collectors, people that do things that AI can't do.
yeah, yeah, I think about time that teachers and maybe nurses, they get their, yeah, fair share of income.
I
Yeah.
think what they do is going to change, but
Hmm.
the fact that they are interacting with people is where the value is.
Yeah, yeah, until we get robots and then they could just do everything. But I think
Yeah.
that's much further away.
Yeah. But even then there's still going to be the human, like the emotional aspect of it, where there's
Hmm.
going to be human to human.
Hmm.
Utopia would be we're in a world where tools do all of the things that we don't want to do and we can spend time being people.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there was a joke that I wanted AI to do my dishes and laundry, but it started doing my art and music, things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Finally, want to talk about like if you wanted to give your top 2 or 3 lessons to a new entrepreneur who's just starting out, like what would they be?
My number one lesson would be find your resources. There are a lot of resources out there for entrepreneurs. There's your small business development centers that are free, right? There's a lot of free resources out there. There's podcasts, there's things like this. There are various free tools. You can even leverage AI to help you find those things based on your industry. So that would be one. The second is you don't have to do it alone. It is a lonely job being an entrepreneur and a founder. Find your people, find a network that you can join. Sometimes those cost money, sometimes they don't, but find a peer network, not just friends, but other people who are entrepreneurs in your area, in your industry that look like you, somebody that you can talk to about the struggles because they've been through it. Somebody has been
Hmm.
through it, whatever it is you're dealing with.
Awesome. Well, Christine, thank you so much. I really enjoyed learning about your
Yeah,
journey, and I think it's pretty inspirational. And yeah, it was
thank
a
you.
pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.